Hi there, it's Mark Wickersham here. In this video, I'm going to share with you how to manage scope creep. In other words, when projects end up taking longer than you expect and you end up making losses. How do we solve that? I'm going to share with you a 7-step framework so that you don't suffer from scope creep again. Hi there, my name is Mark Wickersham, author of a number of books for the accounting profession on value pricing, including effective pricing for accountants, a practical approach to value pricing, and Price, the fastest way to change profits. So in this video, I'm going to take you through those 7 steps, 7 things that you want to do to avoid scope creep, to manage scope creep. So number 1, the first one is what I call building awareness. We have to become more aware of what causes scope creep, because very often we have this blissful ignorance. I think back and remember all the years ago when I was a manager in an accounting firm back in the day when I used to keep timesheets, and towards the end of a project, perhaps the annual financial statements, I would then produce a work in progress report, and I'd often think, wow, there's so much more time than I was expecting, we're going to have to write some of that off. And then you start finding out and asking, well, why? Why did we spend so long on the job? And what we have to do is start to uncover those reasons, to become more aware of those reasons. Because when we are aware of those reasons, then we can start to do something about it. We can start to put systems in place to deal with specific forms of scope creep. And I have another video on YouTube called Scope Creep Examples, where I go through examples of scope creep. So if you've not checked out that one, make sure you go and check out Scope Creep Examples. And also, if you've not done so already, why not subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the little bell so that you get announcements when I produce new videos. That way you'll always see my latest thinking. Okay, so that's number 1, build awareness. Number 2, the next thing we have to do is, when we are at the start of the discussions with the client about talking about the project. So a lot of scope creep and managing it is about dealing with it right up front at the pricing phase. And what you need to be do in that phase is be really clear on what is the outcome of the project? What is the outcome that the client is looking for? What's the result that we're looking for? We have to have complete clarity over that. It should be specified in your fixed price agreement or proposal. There should be this clarity over what is the outcome, because when we have that clarity over what we're trying to achieve, then later on down the line, when other things crop up, as they do from time to time, we can ask ourselves the question as to, does doing this extra thing help them to get the outcome? Or is it something that's just irrelevant, or it's different, it's a different project, we need to price for it separately? So we want that clarity. What are we trying to achieve with this project? Number 3, and again, this is at the outset when we are in the pricing discussions with the client. We need to have complete clarity over what is the scope of work. What is it that you are doing? And that wants to be in writing, in the fixed price agreement or proposal. It has to be really clear. You have to set out exactly what it is that you're going to do. But here's the extra ninja trick. What's even more important is in that document is to set out what's outside the scope. What are things that are not included in that? It's really important to manage the client's expectations so they know what is extra, what they've not agreed to do. Because when you do that, when you specify things that are outside the scope, and then later on down as you do the project, the client says, oh, by the way, could you just do this? Then it makes it much easier because you've properly scoped it out. Number 4, you must make sure the project's signed off. So whether it's a fixed price agreement, a proposal, whatever, that document that specifies what is the outcome, what's the desired outcome, what are you going to do, what's the scope, what's outside the scope, that document must be signed by you and by the client. The client must agree in writing, by signing, that they understand what the scope is. Okay, if my maths is right, number five is now we start doing the work. But before we dive in to do the work, a really important part of dealing with scope creep is communication. It's about how we communicate with the team, how we communicate with the client. We have to make sure there's communication. We have to make sure that the team understands what is the project. So does every member of the team working on that project? So if it's a set of annual financial statements and you might have working on that project a junior member of the team, there may be a senior and a manager. Do they all know what the scope of the project is? Has the junior read the proposal, the fixed price agreement? Do they know what's outside the scope? And the reason that's important is because when I was starting off in the profession many, many years ago, and I was trained to be a chartered accountant, and when I was training and after, I never received any training from the firm on how to deal with scope creep. All I knew was that I wanted to do the very best for the clients. And so, for example, I remember when I was a senior member of the team, I would be working on some financial statements, and the client would ring up and say, Mark, you're just working on the financial statements at the moment. I decided a while ago I want to buy a new house. I need to get a mortgage. And I spoke to the bank, and they say that yes, but they need to have an accountant certificate. They need a letter from you that just sets out my income and projected income. And seeing as you've got the books and records, the bank's given me a simple form to fill in. Can you just sort that out? Could you just sort out a mortgage reference? And so what I would then do is, because it was a great client, I was working on it, I had the books and records anyway, I would then go and fill in the form, perhaps spend an hour or two doing that, and send it off to the client to check, and then off to the bank and so on. But it was outside the scope. It was a different project. That should have been priced separately. And one of the things I've since learned over the years is things like mortgage reference letters. Most accounting firms will do things like that completely for free. There are so many things that we do for free, which we should charge for, because we don't think about it. So you want to make sure that your team is aware of what is the project, what's outside the project, what's not included. If the client asks for this, it's outside. So you want to communicate with your team so they understand the project and understand what to do when they recognize that an instance of scope creep. What do they do? Do they talk to you, the partner? Who will it be? That needs to be part of your communicating and training the team. Okay, now what happens is step 6. Let's imagine the person doing the work has identified something that could be lead towards scope creep. For example, the client asked for something extra. The client's rung up and said, could you just? What do they do? Well, they perhaps come and talk to you. What do you do at that point in time? Now you're aware of some potential scope creep. What do you do? And what you need to do in step 6 is develop some scripts. Some scripts for the words that you use to communicate to the client. You see, if you've done the earlier steps right, if you've clarified and managed the expectations and signed off so the client knows that this thing is now outside the project, whether it's some extra work or the books and records aren't in the state the client promised at the outset, or something else has changed within their business, because you've got it clearly in writing, it's not such a difficult conversation now to have with the client, to pick up the phone, to call the client and say, when we first agreed the project, we said this is what we're doing and this is outside the scope. I've noticed that this has now happened. And the client's not going to object to that because you manage the expectations at the outset. So if you do the first steps earlier, it makes this stage much, much easier, an easier conversation. But what you can also do when you are communicating with the client, as part of your scripts, the things that you say, give the client a choice. Give the client a choice. So, for example, it might be that the client promised right at the outset that the books and records would be in a certain format. And you've now started the work and realised there's things missing, incomplete, errors, whatever it might well be. So we get back to the client, we let them know we've spotted these problems, and we give them a choice. The choice is, number one, we can sort those things out for them, but it'll be an extra, or whatever that price might be. We agree a price for sorting out those problems, or we give the client the choice that in this case we could give them the books and records back so they can fix those particular problems, and then we'll pick up and carry on. Clients love choices. It's not us forcing an extra price rise on them. It's giving them a choice. They can fix the things that they promised would have been done at the outset, or they pay an extra amount. And what I found from experience is most times the client says, do you know what? Can you just fix it for me, please? Yes, we'll happily pay that extra amount. Great, you get a bigger fee. Number 7, the final thing with managing scope creep is when the project's finished, we should always carry out a post-project review where you get together with the key members of the team and ask a series of questions. My friend Ron Baker calls it an after-action review. It's an extremely powerful process where we ask some questions along the lines of, what went wrong on this project? What went right? What things can we learn? What might we do better next time? Because sometimes, however aware you are of past things that have gone wrong with scope creep, there will always be new things that crop up, other things that will go wrong, because that's the nature of an accounting firm. The work we do is complex. Things will crop up that we'd not considered. And the important thing is, when it comes to scope creep, is that we learn from our mistakes. When we recognise that this went wrong for this reason, we can then fix it. We can put something in place. It may be that we change our template proposals and fixed price agreements so that we put an extra bit in the outside the scope to say, if this happens, it's an extra fee. So we could do that. Or we could build in our systems, our training for the team to spot those things. We could build in our scripts, new scripts for how to deal with them, the words that we say when this new thing crops up again in the future. So there's the 7 steps for dealing with scope creep. Let me quickly recap. Number 1, we want to build awareness, become aware of those things, and go and check out my other video on that. If you've not yet subscribed, then subscribe to my channel, and then you'll get notifications of new videos. Number 2, what is the outcome of the project? What are you trying to do? Be clear on the outcome. Number 3, what is the scope of the work and what's outside the scope? Number 4, put it in writing. Number 5, communicate with your team so they understand the project, what's in scope, what's out of scope, and what to do if something crops up. Number 6, create some scripts. Think about the words that you would use to have the conversation with the client and give them some choices. And finally, at the end of every project, do a post-project review. And if anything goes wrong, think about, okay, what systems can we put in place? What changes can we do to our proposal so that this doesn't happen ever again? Thank you so much for watching. If you love this video, please subscribe. Please give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. Feel free to share, comment, and I'll see you again on another video.